What's going on, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today we continue to look at the 2025 regular season schedule, which just dropped for the Jets and the entire NFL earlier this week. Now, many times, and this was more the case when you had 16 games instead of now 17 games, you would break the schedule down into quarters, right? Teams, people who bet, fans would all look at it in kind of different segments, kind of 4-game chunks, and see kind of how we could do, if you could go 2-2 or 3-1 in each of those kind of segments, right? So now it's 17 games, but let's still look at it this way. And when I break it down, I said, just like yesterday, it starts off tough, but after that, it really loosens up. Check this out. Games 1 through 4, okay? This is where we play 3 of the 6 games against playoff teams from last year on the entire schedule. We have that starting one against Pittsburgh, as you know, Pittsburgh and Buffalo to start, and then Tampa on the road. That is a tough stretch with 3 straight games against playoff teams from last year. We'll see what happens in the Aaron Rodgers revenge game. Obviously, Buffalo is tough, and then a trip at Tampa is not necessarily easy either. And back-to-back weeks in Florida with Miami on Monday Night Football after that. And I think that is tough, but the only reprieve is at least it's a night game, so we're not going to have to deal with the sweltering heat of being in Miami in September at a 1 o'clock kickoff, right? This is clearly the toughest stretch of the season. And it's interesting because we're going to be tested early. So I caution everybody, if we come out of this stretch 1-3 or 2-2, that's actually decent because it completely opens up after that, in my opinion, okay? In games 5 through 8, it's Dallas, Denver, Carolina, and Cincinnati. Only one game against the playoff team from last year. That's the Broncos game. Many people believe at Cincinnati would probably be tough as well. But we get home games against the Panthers and the Cowboys. I see those as winnable. All right. So I think that's a nice starting stretch where it's starting to get a little bit more palatable. We also have, the London game is obviously across the pond, but 3 of these games are quote unquote home games for the Jets, right? Home for Dallas, home for Carolina. That is not horrible. And then we've got the bye. We have the bye in week 9, and this is where I believe the schedule truly starts to open up. So if in those first 8 games, honestly, let's say we're just 3-5 for goodness sakes after the first 4 games. Let's say we get one against Dallas and Carolina, maybe one in that first stretch. Literally, if we are at 3-5 going into the bye, look at how this opens up. The next stretch, okay? 2 home games, 2 games away. Only one is against a playoff team from last year, and that is a very tough one at the Baltimore Ravens. Even if you give that one a loss, I'm talking about home for Cleveland, New England, and home for Atlanta. If we are 3-5, I think this is where we can start to make hay, right? Let's say we go 3-1 in that stretch. Things are starting to develop. Things are starting to gel. All of a sudden, we are 6-6 and at 500 for a finishing stretch that I got to tell you, I think the schedule smiles upon us as we get into November and December. This finishing stretch here, the last 5 games, we only have one against the team that was a playoff team from last year. It is the finale at Buffalo in week 18, right? Look at how this opens up in the last 5 games. Home against Miami, and we get Miami in the kind of Northeast in December. That is not bad. Then road trips against 2 teams that I expect to be poor this year, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New Orleans Saints. Then home against the Patriots, and then obviously you finish the one against Buffalo. Now let me tell you something. All right, we have usually split with Buffalo. I got to tell you the truth, okay? We have played the Bills well, so I don't think that's just an automatic 2 losses against the Buffalo Bills, right? In those 5 games to finish off the season, I really do believe home for Miami in December, Jacksonville, New Orleans. Those can be W's, right? So let's say, I would say we go 6-6 into this stretch. We can easily go 3-2 to finish that stretch. That would be a 9-8 record. Okay, now I know sometimes people think that I am optimistic here on Jets Latest. I know sometimes people think I'm being, two kind of rose-colored glasses here, but there is no stretch outside of the very first 3 games of the season that is some kind of gauntlet, that is some kind of thing that is undoable here. There are easy games peppered in, whether it's home for Carolina, home for Cleveland, stretches of at Jacksonville and at New Orleans that I think make this schedule, manageable to be sure. So, you put it all together. I'm not going to be making any kind of big time predictions here, but what I will say is if this team comes together and develops, it will happen as the season goes along and after we have gotten through our toughest stretch. Once again, the idea is to be patient with this Jets team because it will continue to get better and the schedule will continue to kind of loosen up as we go along. All right. Remember also, we had rookie minicamp recently, and I've been talking about some of these new weapons that we have drafted, right? The 2nd-round draft pick, Mason Taylor, and the much talked about 4th-round draft pick, Arian Smith. Listen to what Aaron Glenn had to say about both of these guys, what he is starting to see in them now that they have been on the practice field, okay? First off, on Arian Smith, he goes, Arian has some juice, don't he? God. He can run and he's bouncy. He's a really good athlete, and I thought he was focused on seeing through the ball and bringing it in. I think he did a good job. Now remember, okay, we know about Arian Smith. We know about the drops, right? Listen to how Aaron Glenn is even talking about the coaching point in his comments, the idea of seeing it through the ball and bringing it in. Aaron Glenn, the coaches are teachers. They're focused on development. That is clearly something they're working on with Arian Smith. But just like we've said here on Jets Latest, what cannot be denied, what cannot be taught is the speed that Arian Smith has and the way we are going to use that speed. And it shows up in practice the same way Aaron Glenn and the Jets Brain Trust thought it would when they drafted him. Remember, Arian Smith was on the Georgia track team, for goodness sakes, a track team that finished 2nd in the 4x100 relay, and that speed shows up. Then listen to what he said about Mason Taylor. Mason is exactly who we thought he was. He has dynamic movements. He does a really good job catching the ball and catching it away from his body. He's quick to get north and south, which we call knifing. Then he says, I'm happy with both of those men, and there's a clear vision how we're going to utilize those guys. Again, speaking to the purpose, the intentionality, the vision of how we are going to use those guys. And with Mason Taylor, the sure-handed part of it is definitely important. Remember, he had only 1 drop in about 75 to 80 targets last year, converting first downs, the LSU all-time tight end in terms of receptions and receiving yards. And of course, we all know about the pedigree with Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas in his family, Hall of Fame, gold jacket bloodlines for Mason Taylor. So the other thing that I think is really important is when he talks about we have a clear vision of how we are going to use them. I talk about it all the time. You have Garrett Wilson out there. You have Josh Reynolds, who likes the physicality, another sure-handed guy. Mason Taylor over the middle, Malachi Corley as the Yak King, and then Arian Smith to take the top off. There is a vision on how we are going to use these guys, and that showed up on tape. The other thing he said about Mason Taylor, right? He says that north-south, which we call knifing. Again, so many coaching points are evident anytime Aaron Glenn steps to the microphone. And I think that is very, very important. But when we talk about the draft picks, especially on offense, we have to, again, mention Armand Membu, right? We talked about in yesterday's episode of Jets Latest how Armand Membu was comfortable with his Missouri teammate Brady Cook coming in potentially as QB3 as an undrafted free agent. He is also talking in rookie minicamp about kind of the help he will get from Olu Fashanu, last year's #1 overall draft pick, also an offensive lineman, right? Here's what he said about learning from Olu. He goes, he was a rookie a year ago, so he'll definitely be able to help me out a lot. I asked him what it was like for him, and he's been telling me about the life of a rookie. Once again, this is going to be a line that grows together. I keep on talking about how the interior was strong last year with Simpson, AVT, Tippmann, all inside the top 10 at their position. Fashanu was good last year as well. He only allowed 1 sack in 534 snaps, and now we put Membu on the other side, and you know the stats about Membu, right? The PFF grade of 90+, the not giving up a quarterback hit on Brady Cook or a sack last year, only 3 sacks in 3 years. the athletic scoring that he had. And again, these guys are all 28 years or younger. So the idea of building the wall here as a young kind of offensive line that is talented is truly one of the strengths of this offense and of the team all around. And it looks like already Membu is kind of learning from some of his teammates who have a little bit more experience here in the NFL. All right, so that'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Remember, watch this video, like it, subscribe to the channel, engage with me in the comments. I absolutely love engaging with all the fans of the green and white. And if you want to hear more from me, the spitting statistician Dane Martinez, I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on SiriusXM, Channel 87, the Fantasy Channel. We do more than just talk about the Jets. We talk fantasy football, fantasy baseball, NBA playoffs, which are going on as well. And FTN has all sorts of stuff you need, from simulations, data sets, content, Discord, all things to help you win your leagues and win that cash. One thing I know for sure, we will continue to dig into the schedule. We'll continue to dig into what we are seeing with these rookies, and most importantly, the kind of vision, intentionality, the team culture being built by Darren Muji and, of course, Aaron Glenn, the new head coach. The more and more I hear about it, the more consistent this message is, and the more you see it kind of literally bleeding through this entire team, this entire roster, the coaching staff, and the building. We'll see how it plays out, and we'll look at the schedule even more to see if they're going to overperform next year. Listen, if you have some patience, there are reasons to feel good about the development and the growth of the green and white. We will certainly talk about it down the road, but this is the end of another edition of the JETS Jets Latest. We'll see you next time. We out of here. Peace.